Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon and I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University. Welcome to vlog 282, Thesis Hatement. Thesis Hatement. I'll explain in a sec. But Thesis Hatement is the end of our Dark Academia trilogy. Now, when we started this trilogy, I didn't know it was a trilogy, but I kept on getting these really upsetting, provocative and often pretty horrific emails from students, which I hope I've responded to with some care and with some decency. But it seems appropriate at this moment of international higher education that I respond in the trilogy, the Return of the Jedi moment of our trilogy, like Luke finding the good in Darth Vader. So we're going to find the light amid the darkness. And the vlog this week comes from not only a request, but it's dedicated to two remarkable students who I've been having conversations with about these areas, and they're both gaining a huge expertise in international higher education studies. The first is the legendary Aidan Cornelius Bell, hi Aidan, who is currently under examination, and then there is the remarkable Alyssa Armstrong. Both of these students are my students. And can I say, through this very, very dark time, these two remarkable students have given me laughter and joy more than I could ever express to them. So they're funny, funny people, and we've laughed a lot. And we've had a lot of success, I think, during these very dark times. And I'm not sure I could have got through the last 18 months without them, if I'm honest. And both of these students keep me honest, and they keep me grounded as a human, let alone a supervisor or a dean. And we're writing a piece, the three of us at the moment, revolving around the phrase, the dark doctorate, obviously. And when we were talking about what this article would look like and the bits that we're going to write, the legendary Alyssa uttered the immortal statement, quote, "Sometimes I really love research and sometimes I really need to return to retail." End of quote. And there's something brutalizingly honest about Alyssa's statement there that captures, I think, this binarized nature of dark academic life. Research is thrilling and brilliant and interesting and inspiring, and yet also other bits of academic life are really worrying or fearful or horrific or just a bit of a disaster. And both sides of it are true. Therefore, I think it is appropriate, as I conclude this dark trilogy, that I recognise some light in this pretty dark time. And I wanted to start with an incredibly popular article. Now, popularity and the popular are going to be a sub-theme through this vlog today. So if you're interested in the nature of what is popular and how something becomes popular, that's sort of what I'm going to be talking about as well. But a popular article was published in the Slate in 2013, and it was written by Rebecca Schumann. And of course, the article was titled Thesis Hatement, and the subheading was, quote, "Getting a literature PhD will turn you into an emotional train wreck, not a professor." Will turn you into an emotional train wreck and not a professor. End of quote. Okay, so this article from Slate was shared 38,000 times on Facebook. It had 1,800 comments so far on Slate, and it was retweeted beyond calculation. Okay, so she commences the article with a very concerning first paragraph. Quote, "Who wouldn't want a job where you only work 5 hours a week? You get your summers off and your whole job is reading and talking about books, and you can never be fired. Such is the enviable life of a tenured college professor, and all you have to do to get it is earn a PhD." End of quote. Wow. Wow. Okay. So once more, colleagues, we are seeing the romanticisation of our universities. Now, this life that she's talking about here has never, ever, ever existed. It's never even existed in the Hollywood rendering of, say, a literature professor, the life of C.S. Lewis. in that great film Shadowlands, tremendous film, but that picture that she captures is not even seen in a Hollywood rendering of a literature professor. Okay, now we're going to return to the legendary C.S. Lewis shortly, but let's get into this. Schumann created a dream, a vista of a university, and then after she'd constructed this straw institution, she then went straight into the horror story. So she talked about, instead of this, it's 80-hour weeks and you've got no leave. Okay. And she also, much to my bemusement, horror and nay disgust, also served to critique theories and theorists, describing the role of theorists in academia as, quote, theorising every great book to death, end of quote. Thanks for that. And her commentary for your consideration, I think, was very, very clear. Quote, and this is to you, this is directed to you, our PhD students, quote, don't do it. Just don't. I deeply regret going to graduate school. End of quote. Okay, so she decries the lack of stable work and also, interestingly enough, the competitive applications. So lots of fantastic people are great teachers and have great published research, and that's supposedly a problem. And she also despaired at the way in which the students were, quote, broken down and reconfigured into the image of the academy, end of quote. No, I'm not really sure what that means either. But anyway, she concludes with the argument I want you to consider this week. Okay, let's go into her argument, and this is for you to think about. Quote, with academia, you don't need to pull yourself through 5 to 10 years of the hardest work you will ever do, followed by 4 years and counting of rejection and dejection, simply to conclude that the experience was ill-advised. When it comes to graduate school, you should just chuck the ladder before you try to climb it. You've only got to run the other way. End of quote. Okay, now this short article, and I'm going to use the dreadful phrase, I thought that this phrase would never come out of my mouth, but it is, oh my goodness, this short article went viral. And what happened was a large number of people in graduate programs retweeted this article saying they should leave graduate programs, and yet they remained in graduate programs. So they're torturing themselves. Isn't this tremendous? So the problem is that this article is completely wrong. Completely wrong. It is a complete misreading not only of universities, it's a complete misreading of work. It's a complete misreading of the world. It's not just a misreading of higher education. So think about it. Seriously, think about it. What occupation gives you these days a job for life? What occupation these days gives you a work and life balance? Which job these days actually allows you to clock off and not think about work again? Any job. Okay. Now, why attack the people that summon and construct theory? You know, the courageous people who, from our desolate present, try to configure new alternative trajectories and vistas to get us out of this mess. Yeah, let's critique those people. Going well. So think about it. Who today, is actually paid what they're worth? Think about early childhood educators. Think about nurses. Think about midwives. If the value of the work in our culture was recorded and granted credibility through payment, then our billionaires would be nurses and midwives and teachers, not people that want to go into space. Hashtag just saying. So, as you can see, everything in this article is just simply not the case. And we have to critique this nostalgic version of the university that never actually existed, right? And this is particularly damaging. This sort of construction of an argument is particularly damaging for the individuals and the families around those individuals who had to struggle so hard to get into a university in the first place. Now, my parents had no chance of getting to university. It wasn't even in their mind to think about it as an option or an alternative. My grandfather, Frank Wren, the late Frank Wren, died very early, Frank Wren couldn't read or write. Couldn't read or write. My grandfather, right? So, we need to think about those groups that have been excluded from university throughout the entirety of this history. And let's get into this. So it seems a bit rich to me that a person and the people who have gained so much from education ridicule, minimise and disrespect what it has given to them and to others. Now, Rebecca Schumann has actually done very well in her career. Her PhD has served her well. She's written a popular debut memoir using the context of her thesis on Kafka as the foundation and context for that memoir. Yeah, she's published in the Slate, Quartz. She's published in the Chronicle of Higher Education, the Washington Post, and the Atlantic. She also has an array of media appearances, and yes, she has an affiliation with a university, the University of Oregon. Okay. Now, would any of those achievements, or indeed those income streams, have emerged if she didn't hold a PhD? Maybe, but probably not. So what's that old cliche? Biting the hand that feeds you? So a university education has been granted to Rebecca Schumann. It's given her a career. It's given her choices. It's given her expertise. So in this context, this article has a bit of Monty Python's Life of Brian to it, right? You know that great scene where they go, what have the Romans ever done for us, right? So the PhD becomes, what have the Romans ever done for us besides law and order, a secular society, language, plumbing, and aqueducts? Don't forget the aqueducts. What have these Romans ever done for us? It's the same with the PhD. What's this PhD ever done for us? Except train our mind to a razor's edge, allow us to work with the most brilliant people in a particular moment in human history, write about something that we are passionately interested about, and having the gift and the expertise to be able to disseminate that powerful research to diverse audiences. And maybe, just maybe, through this PhD, we all make the world just a little bit better. But what have the Romans ever done for us? What's this PhD ever done for us? Yeah. Now, certainly the PhD has not granted her a tenured, permanent academic post because the universities have now been restructured so that there are very, very few of these posts remaining. So what's happened is universities and our workforce has become like the workforce in the rest of society. Okay, so let's be clear here. Universities change lives, full stop. And they change the lives of the people who have the privilege to graduate from them. Now, my life would have been nothing without a university education. Probably the happiest I ever was in my life, and you know I don't use the word happiness, I don't think about my life in terms of happiness, but probably the happiest year of my life was 1992, when it was the first year of my research master's degree. Now for me, happiness has never been the goal. I've always been after something else. Happiness is a very limited, very small goal. But I remember being in the first year of that research master's degree and how incredible it was, wow, to read amazing work, learn how to write and write more effectively. And I had the best friends I've ever had in my life. It was an amazing time. And the idea that somebody from my background had an opportunity to have that 1 year of their life is an absolute blessing. An absolute blessing. And you see, that master's and that doctorate gave me the foundation. The foundation to find work and stay in work. It's given me opportunities. It's given me choices. Hasn't given me permanence. Now, what would have happened to me if I hadn't had the chance of an education? Well, here's one we prepared earlier. My grandmother worked in a shop. My mother worked in a shop. Nothing wrong with working in a shop. But my mother, who actually did work in a shop, didn't want her daughter to have the same life that she did. So you get the picture. Education gives you choices. Education gives you opportunities. It opens doors, but you have to decide if you're going to walk through that door. And you know what? None of us ever know what's on the other side of that door. We don't know. We don't know. But what's better, colleagues? Staying in a room without a door, or constructing a room with a door that you can choose to walk through? What's better? No guarantees here. Choices. Now, I'm increasingly in my research, pretty well post-COVID, interestingly enough, using the phrase unpopular a lot. So un with a slash. Un/popular culture. And I use dark culture a lot. And I'm trying to use these phrases like unpopular culture and dark culture to provide new theorizations of populism. Now, I've done a lot of work on populism, particularly in my work on Donald Trump. And so I'm interested in populism, and I'm interested in how unpopular ideas suddenly enter popular culture and become big, right? So as shown through the Schumann article, it is very popular to talk about quitting a PhD. It's part of this popular culture. If you say, I'm going to quit a PhD is useless, that becomes popular. You know what is unpopular right now? It's unpopular right now in these difficult times to dig in, to commit to something, to remind ignorant pundits in anti-intellectual times that reading and writing and research and thinking matter. That's unpopular. Have you got the courage to do it? I think you do. Yes, our culture will continue to ridicule the clever. We live in anti-intellectual times. Yes, this culture will do everything it can to encourage people not to complete a PhD. But what about us? We're right in the middle of this. How disingenuous is it of people who have gained the great gift of doing a PhD that they pull up the drawbridge behind them and stop others from following them? Education gives us choices, but wow, let's stop those choices for other people, shall we? Okay. So this is what this thesis hatement movement is doing. And there is a genre of writing around this thesis hatement stuff, and also another genre that I've done some work on with Aidan and Alyssa on quit lit. So people that are in an academic job and then decide to leave it, but then also decide to write very long articles or blogs about why they've left it, okay? So this thesis hatement stuff and this quit lit is a very big and popular genre. But what are these genres doing for the next generation of really clever people that want choices, that want to test themselves, that want to live and want to think with courage? Higher education has given me a life. And it's not a life of happiness and calmness and joy. It's not a fairy tale. But it's given me a lot more than that. Because education does not make your life easier. That's the point. Education makes your life harder because it makes it real. Makes life real. And never, ever, ever allow the people who have had the great privilege of being able to gain a degree in a university, let alone a higher degree, try and remove that option and that opportunity from you. Think about it. Let's just move context outside of education for a moment. It's like somebody saying, oh look, I live in a really big house, but you don't need to live in a big house. You can live in a tent, it'll be fine. Or, yeah, I got a big car, but look, you can walk. Walking's good enough for you. And therefore, this thesis hatement genre is based on a false binary, that there's an exploitative and temporary workforce and a permanent, freeloading and stable one. And that is a fake binary. I think we all know, with the rolling restructures around the world, that the difference between permanence and unemployment is about 1 minute and 1 email. So what these thesis hatements do in the culture, and this was really well revealed by Sebastian Herman. Sebastian, wonderful article, my congratulations. So Sebastian Herman took on this thesis hatement genre and he looked at it particularly in terms of class-based exploitation. Very clever. He argued that in a time when only the wealthy could enter a program, they could then get a stable job and be able to pay their bills and do well, right? But now what's happening is the wealthy are entering higher degree programs and the result is not stability, it's not a good, stable, middle class job. So the group that expects everything to end well, it's of course not ending well. But as Sebastian states very clearly, this is not about individuals, actually. This thesis hatement movement is not about individuals and individuals making different choices. You know, choosing to do a degree or not choosing to do a degree. Because the overwhelming majority of our population has very few choices. Very few choices about anything. So instead of making all these discussions about individuals choosing to be in a PhD program or not be in a PhD program, we need to start thinking about groups and collectives and communities. And we need to start talking publicly about the importance and the power of higher education, the importance of expertise, and the importance of reading and writing and thinking in difficult times. This discussion is not about whether or not you're enrolled in a PhD. It's actually something much bigger than that. It's about you participating in public education, thinking about the nature and the value of ideas, the value of teaching and learning, the value of research. And our PhD students are brilliant, interesting, complex, but also diverse. They, you, are not easily led by these straw men arguments. You're not naive. But I understand choosing to be educated in anti-intellectual times is not rational. Choosing to enter a PhD in anti-intellectual times now is not logical. It's not. And it's not going to create happiness. But it'll create something else. Fulfillment, wisdom, and an inability to accept simple answers to difficult questions. Now, that seems a pretty good skill set to me in our post-pandemic times. Academic culture is unpopular culture. Think about the bullying that happens to clever kids in school, right? Well, we now have such a marginalisation of our universities that we've almost got this society scale version of kicking the clever kid with glasses during recess in primary school. So we can blame individuals, we can abuse as individuals the great gifts that education has given us, of course, after we've attained them, and we can ignore the role, our role, all our roles in trying to make the environment, the world, our institutions better for the students that follow us, rather than stopping the students that follow us. So I wanted to finish our Dark Academia trilogy with a statement from a scholar I really admire, C.S. Lewis. I don't share his faith structure, but I think he's one of the most powerful writers in the English language. And I think his great gift, which is so rare, is the capacity to squeeze emotion into sentences. I'm not sure anybody does that better than C.S. Lewis. And he once stated, quote, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." End of quote. Now, you may have come into a higher degree program with dreams and hopes and aspirations, and they may have been completely disconnected from the reality of contemporary university life. You may be, like all of us, suffering from appalling disrespect on a daily basis, bullying, anxiety, fear, confusion, labelling. I get it. But I can't, and you can't, and we can't change the beginning of your higher degree. I cannot change the past of your PhD. But we can start today, wherever we are, and we can change that ending. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.